The first thing I felt was the heat. It wasn't the gentle warmth of life, but a devouring, all-consuming inferno that scorched my lungs and melted my skin. The smell of my own burning flesh was a perfume of agony. My vision, bleached white with pain, narrowed to a pinprick, and in that final, searing moment, I heard a scream that seemed to tear the very fabric of the world. Arya. Then nothing. A silent, weightless void. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. The sound was jarringly sweet, clashing violently with the phantom pain still echoing in my nerves. My eyes snapped open. I was not in a hospital bed, my body a ruined husk. I was sitting at a large ornate dining table. In front of me, a lavish chocolate cake blazed with the number 18. Arya. Why are you spacing out? Hurry up and blow the candles. I knew that voice. My cousin Lily. My father's sister's daughter, who had come to live with us after her parents' tragic death. A lie I had believed for years. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. The sight of the flickering flames sent a tremor of primal fear through me. My body froze, muscles locking in a terror so deep it was cellular. Seizing the moment, Lily leaned forward with a theatrical little puff and blew out my candles. The cheerful birthday song ended, and the room plunged into an abrupt, uncomfortable silence. Lily smiled, a triumph glittering in her wide, doe-like eyes. I helped you blow them out. You won't be mad, right, sis? The familiarity of the scene crashed over me. This was my 18th birthday party. The day before the pin in the ballet shoe. The year before the fire. I had been reborn. A cold, clear calm settled over the initial panic. I folded my arms, my gaze sweeping across the faces of my friends and family. It landed on him. Leo. My childhood sweetheart, the boy next door I had loved since I could remember. In my past life he had been the one to scoop me into his arms when my shoe was sabotaged. He was also the one who turned his back on me in the sea of fire. This time he stayed quiet, standing slightly apart, a spectator. His handsome face was etched with worry, but his eyes, those beautiful hazel eyes I had once gotten lost in, weren't on me. They were flicking between me and Lily, a silent plea for me not to make a scene. So the signs had always been there. I had just been too blind, too trusting to see them. I kept my silence, letting the stifling atmosphere thicken. I looked at Lily, her expression a perfect mask of innocent concern, so like the vixen of a mother she'd inherited it from. Why wouldn't I be mad? My voice cut through the quiet, sharp and clear. A ripple of shock went through the room. I was never confrontational. I was the peacemaker, the gentle Arya. They say blowing out someone else's birthday candle is a curse, wishing them an early death. I continued, my tone conversational yet icy. Little cousin, you're only 16. How could you be so cruel? The blunt words, devoid of their usual sugarcoating, shattered Lily's mask. Her eyes widened, a flash of serpentine malice surfacing before she could bury it. Seconds later, her eyes welled with manufactured tears, and she threw herself into my father's arms, sobbing as if her heart were breaking. Her face, smeared with cake cream from her dramatic puff, was both pitiful and ridiculous. Arya, what are you saying? My father scolded, patting Lily's back. She's still a kid. What's the big deal if she blew your candle for you? I let out a thin, humorless smile. 14 is the age of criminal responsibility in many places. She's 16. What part of that is still a kid? My father was rendered speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I pressed my palms together and closed my eyes as if in prayer. My first wish, I announced to the room, is that the curse rebounds on the spot. Hearing that, Lily burst into even louder, uglier sobs. And Leo, who had been maintaining his aloof silence, spoke up for the first time. Arya, just have Lily apologize. It doesn't need to be this serious. I laughed. The sound was bitter and foreign even to my own ears. When she cursed me, you didn't say a word. But the moment I returned the favor, you scold me. I picked up my glass of red wine, swirling the dark liquid, briefly imagining the satisfaction of flinging it in his face. He stepped forward, his body instinctively shifting to shield Lily behind him. The gesture, so small, so automatic, was a dagger to the heart of the girl I used to be. But the new Arya, the one forged in fire, felt only a surge of cold disgust. In truth, when the explosion burned me, I hadn't died immediately. My body was scorched and disfigured, and I lay in the ACU for an entire month, a prisoner in a cage of unending pain. In the end, my mother, unable to bear her daughter's suffering, had taken my oxygen mask off with her own hands, a final heartbreaking act of mercy. After that, she and my father divorced, and not long after she followed me in spirit. My father was left with only Lily. All our property, everything my mother had built, went to her and, eventually, to Leo. I looked at Leo, the face I'd secretly loved for over a decade. For the first time I saw him not as my savior but as my betrayer. My eyes lifted, searching the crowded room for another face. A face I had rejected and scorned in my previous life. The school's notorious troublemaker, Kale. Ever since I'd turned him down, he always stood in the farthest corner, a silent, brooding shadow quietly watching me. This time I couldn't find him. A sudden, inexplicable panic seized me and I stumbled on the hem of my dress. A large, strong hand shot out and caught my waist, steadying me. When I looked up, my eyes met a pair of intense, dark pupils, deep and ardent. It was Kale. Aria's waist is so small, a voice whispered in my mind. I want to hold on just a little longer. No, she'll be scared. I froze. I could hear his thoughts. Maybe because I had been reborn thanks to the sheer desperate will he had poured onto my grave in another life, our souls were now tethered. He gently steadied me and immediately let go as if my skin had burned him. But that same hand curled into a fist and without a moment's hesitation, flew forward to land a punch squarely on Leo's face. The crack of knuckles meeting jaw echoed in the stunned silence. Leo, caught completely off guard, collapsed to the floor. He clutched his cheek, forcing himself up, his eyes blazing with fury. Sorry, Kale said, his voice a low, unapologetic growl. My hand slipped. Then his internal voice followed, laced with disappointment. The trash finally had a chance to be punched, but the blow was a little light and off angle. I wanted to do it again. Realizing he was helping me vent, a genuine, unexpected laugh bubbled out of me. Leo, quick-witted, caught the unspoken implication instantly. His complexion flickered between green and white, looking more unpleasant than I had ever seen him. The party effectively ruined limped on. I went outside to the balcony for air, leaving Leo to get bandaged and comfort a sobbing Lily. I needed a moment to process the surreal nightmare that was now my reality. The cool night air was a balm, but the memory of the fire was a brand on my soul. A whiff of cigarette smoke drifted past. I turned and saw Kale leaning against the railing, a red ember glowing between his fingers. The sight of the fire so close made the memory jolt through me again. The flames surged in my mind and I swayed, my vision darkening. Oh no, if Arya catches me smoking, his panicked thought rang out. I watched, horrified, as he clamped his hand over the lit tip of the cigarette to extinguish it. Stop. I lunged forward, grabbing his wrist and pulling his hand away. Sure enough, a vicious red burn mark was already blistering on his palm. What are you doing? You're burned. Oh my god. Oh my god. Arya is holding my hand, his mind screamed, even as his outward posture remained one of arrogant indifference. Come on, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I'll take you upstairs and get that bandaged. I tried to pull him away but he didn't budge. He suddenly grew serious, his dark eyes searching mine. You still have 2 wishes left unspoken, right? He asked, his voice low. I was startled. Yes. He nodded firmly, his expression that of a loyal knight pledging his sword. Then make them. Without overthinking it, I rose onto my toes and pressed a gentle, fleeting kiss to his lips. This is the second wish. Kale's eyes darkened, the pupils dilating. He rolled the tip of his tongue, almost unconsciously licking the corner of his mouth where my lips had been. So, he murmured, his voice husky, what about the third wish? Just then the balcony door slid open. Leo stepped out, his jacket on. I could see the small, telltale bulge of a ring box in his left breast pocket. He'd planned to use it to confess to me tonight. He had come with all the confidence in the world, only to have his face bruised and his plans derailed. Right in front of him, I turned back to Kale, my decision made. Kale, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the night air. Will you be my boyfriend? His eyes widened. Really? For real? The surprise and raw delight on his face was unbearably endearing. I rose onto my toes and kissed him again, a little less gently this time. From now on, you're my boyfriend. No backing out, okay? The moment the words left my mouth, a strong arm snaked around my waist, pulling me firmly against him. His other hand cupped my face and a fierce, possessive kiss crashed down on my lips, stealing my breath and setting my world spinning on a brand new axis. Finally, I thought as I kissed him back. Finally. The world narrowed to the feel of Cale's lips on mine, a stark contrast to the searing heat of my memories. This fire was one of life, of possession, of a long-suppressed desire finally unleashed. It was nothing like the gentle, hesitant kisses I'd shared with Leo in what felt like another lifetime. This was a claiming. When he finally pulled away, both of us were breathless. The arrogant mask was gone, replaced by a raw, vulnerable wonder. "Really?" he whispered again, his forehead resting against mine as if he still couldn't believe it. "Really," I confirmed, my voice steadier than I felt. Behind us, Leo stood frozen, a statue of disbelief and dawning fury. His hand was clenched so tightly around the ring box in his pocket that I could see the white of his knuckles even from a distance. The low pressure radiating from him was almost tangible. I didn't grant him a single glance. I simply took Cale's hand, the unburned one, and led him back inside, upstairs to my bathroom to tend to his wound. As we passed Leo in the doorway, Cale deliberately shifted, pulling me closer against his side, a silent territorial message that was as clear as day. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, but it wasn't from fear of Leo. It was the adrenaline of my new reality, the shocking rightness of Cale's hand in mine. Passing the living room, my wrist was suddenly caught in a vice-like grip. "Leo." The pain was sharp, immediate. Before I could even react, Cale swept Leo's hand away with a violent, fluid motion and pulled me behind him, his body a solid, protective wall between me and my childhood sweetheart. "Arya, you and him." Leo's voice was strained, his eyes pools of grief and confusion. He looked at me as if I had personally driven a knife into his heart. I could feel the tension thrumming through Cale's body. He was rigid, trembling slightly. "He's afraid," I realized with a jolt. "He's afraid this is all a game, a whim to make Leo jealous." I wasn't going to let him live with that doubt for even a second. I smiled, a bright, genuine smile, and stepped out from behind him, laying my hand possessively on his waist. It was surprisingly firm and solid beneath the slim-fitting black shirt. His eyes went wide. "Oh no," she touched my waist. "Is it too skinny? I have to train more tonight." I almost laughed out loud. "Cale and I are together now," I announced, my gaze locked on Leo. "Wish us luck." "Oh, Leo. Big brother Leo." I deliberately drew out the two words, big brother. He was only a few months older than me. For years I'd followed him around, calling him that so affectionately that neighbors would chuckle and call us an adorable little pair. But later, when Lily had shown up and asked, "Leo, big brother Leo, are you in love with Arya?" his answer was always, "We're just like siblings." Maybe in that moment the truth of his feelings, or lack thereof, had been laid bare. Yet I hadn't wanted to see it. Why did he want to keep me by his side if he didn't love me that way? The question, which had haunted my previous life, now felt irrelevant. Leo stood blocking the hallway, his mouth opening to form a retort, when a loud, dramatic clatter followed by a piercing scream erupted from the living room. "Lily." Of course. We rushed back to find her standing in the ruins of the champagne tower, glass shards and bubbling liquid at her feet. She looked a perfect picture of clumsy distress. Leo immediately lunged forward, wrapping her in his arms, carefully checking her for injuries. "By God, Lily. Are you hurt?" he fretted, his attention completely captured. Lily's face was pale, but as she looked at me over Leo's shoulder, she managed a fleeting, smug smile before her expression crumpled again. I simply smiled back. She'd always been a master of these petty tricks to steal the attention of the men around me, and unfortunately, both my father and Leo were her most willing audience. "How careless can you be?" my father scolded, but his actions were ones of extreme tenderness as he immediately draped his jacket over her trembling shoulders. She lifted her tear-streaked face. "Sister, I'm so sorry. It was all my clumsiness," she mumbled, then bowed her head and covered her face with her hands, her sobs echoing in the now silent room. I unconsciously tightened my arm around Cale. A deep, subconscious dread whispered that people who cared about me were always so easily pulled into her orbit. Cale, however, didn't seem pulled. He was repelled. He lightly patted my shoulder in comfort, then his mouth curled into a cocky, dismissive smile. Clumsy really? His voice cut through the sympathetic murmurs, laced with open scorn. Even my family's dog at a party would never topple a champagne tower. He turned his sharp gaze directly to Lily. I heard you're 16 now. Maybe get your cerebellum checked. Is something wrong with it? After delivering the brutal line, he turned his head away, his face a mask of undisguised disgust. The thing was, Cale was an only son from a family with formidable if shadowy influence. The whole room fell into a stunned silence. No one dared contradict him. Right then I heard his private thought laced with irritation. Oh God, my allergy to idiots is acting up again. I honestly want to hit someone. The corner of my mouth twitched. This man who everyone feared and labeled a thug, was resolutely, fiercely on my side. The warmth that spread through my chest was unexpected and profound. Come on, I said softly, tugging his hand. Let's get that burn looked at. I led him upstairs to my room and sat him on the edge of my bed. His whole body went stiff, his back ramrod straight, not touching the headboard. So tense. This isn't my room. Behave. Don't stare around. At my silent, unspoken cue, he immediately settled, placing his large, injured hand palm up in mine. The obedience was so instant, it felt like training a highly strung loyal guard dog. The red burn mark on his palm was an angry, blistering red. Does it hurt? I asked softly, gently dabbing ointment on it with a cotton swab. His face flushed a deep red and he stared fixedly at the ceiling, refusing to meet my eyes. My skin's thick. I don't really feel it, but Arya is applying ointment to me. Her hand is so soft, so smooth. I'm getting antsy. Maybe I should pretend it hurts. Arya's V-neck dress is really pretty, but don't bend down so low when you put on ointment. For things that require bending, I'll do them for her. Hearing every one of those unfiltered thoughts made my own cheeks heat. I sat up straight, the warm feeling in my chest growing. I suddenly remembered a time at the beach with Leo. I'd worn a backless sundress, and when a few male tourists glanced my way, Leo had immediately thrown his jacket over my shoulders. Wearing that little, "Who are you planning to show it to?" he'd scolded, his tone a mix of care and control. I'd spent the rest of the day covered up, my smile in the photos forced. For a long time after that, I hadn't dared to wear anything revealing. Until today. Cale's internal monologue, for all its gruffness, had chased those old insecurities away in an instant. He didn't want to hide the flower away from prying eyes. He just wanted to stand guard so it could bloom brilliantly. Emboldened, I leaned closer, studying the young man before me. His flush had reached the tips of his ears. On a teasing impulse, after I finished applying the ointment, I lightly ran my fingernail down the uninjured part of his palm. Cale startled as if electrocuted. His Adam's apple bobbed and his eyes, dark and intense, finally locked onto mine. The air in the room, despite the open window, became hot and oppressively stuffy. "Arya," he murmured, his voice a low rasp. "What are you doing?" Just then a knock sounded at the door. "It's my mother," I whispered. Cale panicked, scrambling off the bed so fast he tumbled to the floor with a thud. It wasn't anything indecent, yet he looked as flustered as if we'd been caught in the act. I hurriedly shoved him under my writing desk. "Arya, go get ready for the family photo, okay?" my mother called through the door. "I'll be right there." I scrambled out, leaving Cale hiding beneath the table, his face so red it looked like it might combust. I could almost hear his frantic prayers that my mother wouldn't misunderstand. My mother took my hand, her touch gentle. "A lot happened at today's birthday party. Don't let it weigh on your heart. Tomorrow I'll take you out." Watching her thin back, my nose stung with sudden emotion. In both my lives she had always tried to make every birthday the best for me. In the crowd she finally spotted my father. "Come here, let's take a family photo." My father looked up, his first reaction a flicker of guilt. Only after confirming Lily wasn't standing nearby did he hurry over. Lily was, in fact, his illegitimate daughter, a secret my mother had discovered too late. Her mother had died and he'd brought her home for my mom to raise. From then on, my mother lived like a de facto stepmother, and for years she and I had endured all kinds of subtle grievances. A family photo with just the three of us had always been my birthday tradition. This year, as we lined up, Lily suddenly rushed forward, clutching her left hand. "Dad, my hand hurts," she cried. A thin trickle of blood, conveniently sourced from the broken glass, no doubt, ran down her arm. Her tears flowed more freely than the blood. Didn't I tell you to let the maid clean up the glass shards? Why would you rush in like that? My father scolded, but his steps were already carrying him toward her. I grabbed his sleeve. Dad, today is my birthday. Can we finish the family photo first? A flicker of hesitation crossed his eyes. Lily gave a smile uglier than crying. It's fine, Dad. You two go ahead. Capture that whole family blessing. Then she muttered softly, the words designed to cut deep. If only I had a mom too. She turned and bolted out. My father panicked, called after her, and hurried off without a backward glance. In my past life, this had ruined my birthday. I'd gotten into a bitter fight with my mother. Now, seeing the profound sadness on her face, I realized the one truly unhappy wasn't me. It was her. Because she was the wife, the mother, she had to bear more, endure more. She patted my shoulder. It's okay, Arya. We'll wait for your dad to come back and then take the picture. Under the bright lights, I noticed for the first time strands of gray in her hair. She used to smile so much. She must have been exhausted all these years. I turned and wrapped my arms around her in a tight hug. It's fine, Mom. Just the two of us. We can take the photo together. How long did one picture take anyway? If my father was so quick to chase after Lily, then we didn't need him anymore. I pulled the man standing quietly near my mother closer. Uncle Ben, take a photo with us. My mother and Ben had been childhood sweethearts, both proud and bright until my father had forced his way into the picture. Ben had never married, always treating me as his own, perhaps still carrying his own quiet regrets. My mother had always held a quiet affection for him too. All these years he had cared for her, but always within proper boundaries, restrained by courtesy. Seeing her live an unhappy life must have been a special kind of bitterness for him. At my words, Ben smiled gently and stepped forward, though my mother's face still carried a hint of shyness. I stood in the middle, quietly pulling the two of them closer together. The camera flashed, capturing a new kind of family. That night, after my mother and I had washed up, my dad suddenly remembered the photo. Arya, call your mom and come down. Let's take the picture now. Towel drying my hair, I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down at him. No need anymore, I said, my voice flat and final. Not now. Not ever again. When I returned to my room, my mother was sitting on my bed, waiting. Arya, I have something I want to discuss with you. Just like in my past life, at this moment she was thinking of divorce. Back then, I hadn't understood her pain, begging her to stay for the sake of the family, condemning her to more years of quiet suffering. Arya, what do you think? Her voice was so soft, almost pleading. My eyes stung. I threw myself into her arms. Mom, you've suffered enough all these years. He wept. Then something I rarely saw. Struck me that even mothers feel wrong sometimes. End this marriage, Mom, I said, my voice firm. And not just that, we have to take back everything that rightfully belongs to us. Over the years, my father had built the company using my mother's capital and family connections. In truth, 80% of the shares legally belonged to her. In my previous life, we died too soon, leaving it all to fall into Lily's hands. My mother wiped her tears and stroked my hair, a determined smile breaking through her sadness. We must take it all back. She then tossed a stack of photos onto the bed. They were pictures of my father looking tender with another woman. The woman looked unervingly familiar. It was Diana, Lily's so-called foster mother, who was in fact a close friend of Lily's biological mother. The audacity was staggering. I couldn't help but give my mother a thumbs up. The gentle, mild woman I remembered had been quietly planning something this big all along. Just as she was about to leave the room, she stopped, her eyes twinkling. That handsome kid hiding under your desk earlier. His name is Kale, right? I saw everything. My face flushed crimson. Ah, he's just a classmate. Mom nodded, a knowing look on her face. I think he's a good one. Has way more potential than that, Leo. After saying that, she walked out, politely closing the door behind her and leaving me sitting there, red as a beet. When I was finally alone, I noticed a scrap of paper left on my desk. The handwriting was surprisingly neat. Oh, ma'am. I'm Kale. I was burned. Your kind daughter helped me apply ointment. We didn't do anything else. I swear. Someone had even drawn a little doodle of a tiny person raising a hand in a solemn oath. My heart melted. Since when did Kale become this adorable? My phone lit up. A message from an unknown number followed by a WeChat friend request. Hey, accept it. I smiled, accepting the request. Sup? Nothing, he replied instantly. Just that boyfriends should have their girlfriends on WeChat, right? I opened his profile. His friend list was public, but he didn't post much. The most striking thing was his profile picture. The photo of us kissing on the balcony, taken from an angle that made it look like a scene from a movie. The lighting was flattering, the composition perfect. So, you like the public display? I typed. Not bad. You must have put effort into it. Pause. Oh no, what am I even saying? Am I not focused enough? Next time I'll put all my heart into it. I promise. Suddenly, I felt like a blushing schoolgirl, the shadows of my past life receding in the face of this awkward, earnest boy. We chatted late into the night, neither of us wanting to be the one to end the conversation. He sent good night several times before I finally fell asleep, my heart feeling inexplicably wonderfully sweet. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that this life could be different. It was a fragile feeling, but it was there, kindled by the boy with the burned hand and the fiercely loyal heart. The next morning, the scent of smoke and betrayal was gone, replaced by the mundane aroma of coffee and toast. For a moment, lying in my bed, I was disoriented. The soft morning light felt like a lie after the inferno of my memories. Then it all rushed back, the birthday, the kiss, Kale. A slow smile touched my lips. This was my second chance. When I stepped outside, the familiar sight of Leo's silver sedan parked in front of the house was like a splash of cold water. Usually he'd wait inside, scrolling through his phone. Today he was leaning against the hood, wearing the jacket I'd painstakingly saved up to buy him last Christmas. He had that neighborly, clean-cut handsomeness that made girls look twice, and right now, his expression was a carefully constructed mask of contrite concern. When he saw me, he stepped forward, his hand automatically reaching for the breakfast bag I was carrying. Let me get that for you, Arya. Previously, Leo's breakfast had always been prepared by me. I'd wake up early to make sure he had his favorite avocado toast and freshly squeezed juice. I used to think that loving someone meant caring for them wholeheartedly, while he took it for granted as if it were his divine right. I lifted my hand, pulling the bag just out of his reach. Thanks, Leo. But no need. This wasn't prepared for you. He froze, his hand hanging in the air. A flash of genuine loss, or perhaps just wounded pride, crossed his face. Just then, a bright, chirpy voice sliced through the tension. Leo. Arya. It's my turn to sit in the back seat today. Without waiting for a reply, Lily scrambled into the back of Leo's car, a picture of childish entitlement. The three of us had this ridiculous, long-standing argument over who got to sit in the front passenger seat. I used to want that seat so badly, seeing it as a symbol of my place in his life. Lily, of course, had to fight me for it, and we'd eventually settled on a system of taking turns. Looking at her now, smug in the back and Leo's expectant face, I felt a wave of profound exhaustion. Was any of it ever worth fighting over? Leo blocked my path as I tried to walk past. Arya, are you mad at me? He asked, his voice low and earnest. No, I said, and I meant it. It's just not worth being mad anymore. The roar of a motorcycle engine cut off whatever he was about to say next. Before he could form another word, a sleek black motorbike screeched to a halt directly in front of me. Kale sat astride it, a black helmet obscuring his face, his cocky, glowing eyes the only thing visible through the visor. He didn't spare Leo a single glance. Instead, he raised his brows at me, a silent, commanding get on. Smiling, I took the hand he offered and swung my leg over the bike, settling behind him. I wrapped my arms around his waist, feeling the solid muscle beneath his leather jacket. I knew perfectly well that behind his aloof posture he was bursting with joy. I could almost hear a triumphant rock anthem playing in his head. As we pulled away, roaring past Leo's parked car, Lily stuck her head out the window, her eyes wide with fake admiration. Arya, who's that guy? His bike is so cool, she called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Can he take me to school tomorrow? I go to South High. It's close to your school. At once, the imaginary music in Kale's mind screeched to a halt. His brows furrowed sharply behind the visor. Did you go get your cerebellum checked yesterday? He snapped over the engine's growl, not even bothering to look at her. If not, maybe check your brain while you're at it. He leaned down, his movements suddenly gentle, and carefully fastened the strap of the spare helmet he'd handed me under my chin. We're dating, he stated, the words a flat, final decree. We don't need a calculating third wheel. Lily's bright smile froze, then wilted, leaving her looking like a shriveled, bitter eggplant. In the rearview mirror I saw Leo lower his head. When he looked up, his eyes were suspiciously red. Perhaps he was finally remembering all the times he had taken her side, all the times my feelings had been the casualty in his quest to appease her. The truth was, Lily never truly loved him. She only liked snatching away the men beside me. It was a habit she'd learned early from her mother. It was my first time on the back of a motorcycle and a nervous thrill shot through me. But the moment I thought of who was holding the handlebars, Cale with his fierce, unwavering loyalty, the fear vanished, replaced by a wild sense of freedom. I tightened my arms around his waist and rested my cheek against his solid back. This time I didn't hear his scattered inner thoughts, only the powerful, steady pounding of his heart, strong and hot against my ear like the midday sun. At the school parking lot, Cale's crew was already waiting, a group of guys with a reputation for being rough around the edges. The moment I climbed off the bike, they all swarmed forward. Ha! Hey, sister-in-law. First time the boss has ever carried anyone on that baby of his. You're even prettier than in the picture. A whole gang of intimidating-looking boys turned out to be surprisingly warm and enthusiastic, bombarding me with questions until I felt dizzy. Cale locked his bike and pulled me protectively behind him. All right, that's enough. You'll have time to get to know her later. The noise died down instantly. He tilted his head toward me and held out a small, neatly wrapped box. Here. Breakfast for you. His eyes were lit with a quiet pride, his face glowing as if handing me a simple croissant was the greatest achievement of his life. I rose onto my toes, whispering in his ear, "Don't like it?" Cale swallowed hard, his gaze dropping to my lips. I laughed, spun around and dashed away. Oops, I'm going to be late. See you later. On the way to class I noticed the stares. Some people shyly averted their eyes, others whispered behind their hands. I felt a prickle of unease. Arya, you're here. Something big happened. My roommate, Sarah, yanked me into a quiet corner, her face pale and flustered. Have you checked the school form yet? Hurry, open it. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I pulled out my phone and opened the app. My name sat at the very top of the trending list. South High's campus beauty, flirtatious and shameless. My blood ran cold. I clicked on the post. There was a video. In it, I was wearing the red V-neck dress from my birthday, my skin glowing. The clip had been expertly and maliciously edited. All the conversations with Leo and Cale were gone, leaving only fragmented moments of touch. My hand on Cale's waist, him steadying me, our kiss, and one single damning line from me, looped for effect, "Be my boyfriend." The effect was ridiculous. It made it look like I was saying the same line to two different people, a heartless flirt playing both sides. The comments below were a torrent of curses and vile accusations. Could have fooled me, she seemed so pure. Slut. No wonder Leo looked so upset at her party. Who does she think she is? I couldn't help but let out a short, bitter laugh. Ridiculous schemes from my stepsister. Clips like that stitched together. But how did she get footage from inside our home? Unless she had help. She must have figured that even if she staged something, no one would dare call her out, especially with my father wrapped around her little finger. While I scrolled, I calmly took screenshots, saving every piece of evidence. Sarah gaped at me. Don't just sit there saving it. We have to report it. This is cyberbullying. In the comments, a new thread was blowing up fast. Hot topic. Some guy claims he hooked up with Arya, the South High campus beauty. My stomach churned. I clicked on it. It was Liam, a boy from a neighboring college who had pursued me relentlessly last semester. I'd rejected him firmly and clearly. Now, surrounded by a group of leering male classmates, he was spinning a sordid, detailed fantasy, each filthy line sending his friends into raucous laughter. Their petty, venomous gazes swept toward me across the classroom. Sarah, furious, stepped in. What are you doing? Slander is a crime. They just sneered. You did it, you won't even say it? What do you know about slander? And burst into mocking laughter. Sarah was so angry she started to cry. I patted her back to comfort her. A strange calm descended over me. This was Lily's move. Predictable. But I wasn't the same Arya. I stood up and walked over to Liam's group. They fell silent, smirking. I looked him directly in the eye, making my voice weak and bewildered. Liam? Are all the things you said true? I asked, injecting a tremor into my voice. Oh my God, why don't I remember anything? I must have been drugged without knowing it. I widened my eyes, playing the part of the horrified, vulnerable victim. I have to report this to the police. You're all witnesses. You'll stand up for me, won't you? Liam, all bluff and bluster, was suddenly cornered. His smirk vanished, replaced by panic. His friends shifted uncomfortably. Before he could react, I turned on my heel, pulled out my phone, and with a few swift clicks, submitted all the saved evidence to the campus security portal and filed a formal cyberbullying report. Then I burst out of the classroom crying and screaming, I can't live like this. I can't live like this. The situation escalated instantly. Classmates who had been watching with folded arms now scrambled to alert the instructor and the dean. I wasn't running randomly. I had a destination in mind. I went straight to South High Lily's school. Because I knew once a rumor spreads, whether true or false, the label is hard to erase. Rather than spend my time just defending myself, I needed to tear apart the person who set the trap. I marched into the administrative office, putting on my most distressed face. Hello, teacher. I'm Arya. My stepsister Lily is in Class A. She secretly brought a phone to school. I'm here to get it back. She's been using it to spread horrible lies about me. South High was notoriously strict. The homeroom teacher, an experienced no-nonsense woman, snapped her book shut and assumed a stern stance. Immediately, Lily was summoned and her phone along with several of her classmates' devices were confiscated. My suspicion was right. It wasn't just one person but a group of them colluding. Lily, who always played the obedient straight-A student, turned pale. When the teacher confiscated the phone, she didn't dare resist. I took the phone, my fingers flying across the screen, saving the evidence of her orchestration before deleting the original posts, cutting off the source. I had to stop the spread while public opinion hadn't yet flooded beyond recovery. Kill it at the root. I didn't want nationwide notoriety. After the posts were deleted, the hashtag South High Campus Beauty briefly climbed higher due to search volume. But I was ready. I uploaded the full unedited video from our home security system, the one my mother had quietly given me access to, which showed the complete context of the balcony scene, my confrontation with Leo, and the truth of my relationship with Kale. When the truth became known, the narrative shifted. Netizens quickly noticed the malicious edits and turned their fury on the rumor starters. Lily's private background was quickly exposed online. The fact that she was an illegitimate child, that her mother had been a homewrecker. It all came out. Liam, the guy who'd confessed and failed, was revealed to have created countless fake accounts to smear me. They'd planned to use an uninformed crowd to satisfy their dirty purposes. But in the end, they had to swallow the bitter fruit they'd sown. Even though I handled it promptly, the gossip still spread like wildfire across both schools. For a pretty female student, even the smallest mark gets endlessly magnified. On the way back to my own class, I heard girls whispering behind me. Look, that's her. Pure my foot. At school, she rejects Kale's crew. At home, she's licking his boots. Totally not fit for our Kale. It turned out those comments were from Kale's fan club. I pulled out my phone. A stream of messages and missed calls flashed up. 9 out of 10 were from him. Where are you? Arya, answer me. I saw the forum. Don't listen to them. Oh no. I'd forgotten to tell him I was okay. I was about to call him back when Sarah grabbed my arm again, her eyes wide with alarm. Hurry. Kale is beating up Liam. My heart dropped. I ran. When I arrived at the secluded courtyard behind the gym, Liam was curled on the ground, begging pitifully. Don't hit me. Please stop. I won't do it again. Kale didn't say a word. His eyes were bloodshot, his knuckles raw and bleeding. He licked his dry lips, a predator toying with his prey. He stepped forward slowly and kicked once, hard enough to make Liam groan, but not hard enough to cause serious damage. He was controlling himself, but just barely. I rushed forward and wrapped my arms around Kale from behind. Don't hit him, I pleaded, my voice firm. This is filthy. He's not worth it. His body went rigid, a statue of fury. After a long moment, he slowly turned to me. His expression softened immediately, but he was still too angry to hug me. Why didn't you pick up? He demanded, his voice rough with worry and rage. Why didn't you answer my messages? Do you know how scared I was? I thought something had happened to you. I'm sorry, I murmured, tugging gently on the sleeve of his jacket. I thought it was a small thing, nothing you should be troubled about. Cale let out a half-laugh, a sound devoid of humor. A small thing? Do you know how scared I was that something real might happen to you because of these lies? I'm sorry, I said again, my voice softer. I looked up at him, letting him see the sincerity in my eyes. I promise I'll make sure you know next time before I do something risky. Oh my, Arya, acting all cutesy, needing to be reminded to be steady, his inner voice grumbled, but I could feel the tension leaving his body. I deliberately scooted closer and gave his hand a little shake. I know I was wrong, but you've got to trust that I can handle things. Didn't I deal with it well? Unable to hold back any longer, Cale tightened his arms around me and sighed deeply, the sound wrenched from his very core. His voice dropped to a low, urgent plea. Just don't do that again. Don't shut me out. At that moment, the school counselor arrived. Hearing the authority in her footsteps, Liam, suddenly emboldened, began shrieking. Teacher, help me. Cale beat me. Don't let him get away with it. Cale only flexed his arms slightly, and Liam shrank back into a corner, terrified. The counselor had indeed come to handle the matter. After a quick verification, she promptly announced, Liam has been found to have fabricated obscene rumors and slandered a classmate. He is expelled from his college, effective immediately. Teacher, what about him hitting me? Liam cried, pointing a trembling finger at Cale. Why isn't that being handled? The counselor pushed her glasses up her nose and fixed him with a stern look. He, she said, pointing at Cale, is a distinguished guest and a student at a neighboring prestigious academy, unaffiliated with this specific disciplinary matter. She then looked at Cale, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on her lips. However, next time you feel the need to do something righteous, be mindful of the limits, young man. Thank you, teacher, Cale said, his voice respectful. That evening, as I was packing up my books, Leo came looking for me. He handed me a cup of milk tea. Green jasmine. Lily's favorite flavor. I took it and set it aside on the desk without taking a sip. Is something wrong? He fumbled with the strap of his bag, hesitated, and then began to speak. About today. Don't keep it to yourself. You can trust me, Arya. I finished zipping up my bag, stood up, and slung it over my shoulder. Thanks. I'm fine. So, he pressed, his eyes searching mine. What they said, was any of it true? Weren't you the one who told me to believe you? Now he was asking for my opinion. Did those people say the one you like is actually me? And because Cale chased you so hard, you only stayed with him to make me jealous? I laughed and nodded. Yes. So what? His eyes lit up with a desperate hope and he grabbed my hand, his voice steady and intense. Arya, I want to win you back. I pulled my hand away as if burned and handed the milk tea back to him. Leo, you know what I hate most? Jasmine milk tea. Give it to Lily. She loves it. A flash of genuine surprise crossed his face. Right. Lily was the youngest, so everyone always gave in to her. They gave so much she even felt entitled to take my identity, my life, my men. The classroom door burst open as Cale's friends rushed in, quickly forming a wall between me and Leo. Little sister-in-law. The boss is waiting for you out on the basketball court. I smiled at Leo one last time, a final dismissive glance, and then walked away with Cale's crew, leaving him standing alone in the classroom, clutching 2 cups of unwanted jasmine tea and the shattered pieces of his assumptions. The late summer sun was a dying ember in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the school grounds. The air was warm and soft, carrying the scent of cut grass and the distant cheers from the sports fields. Cale's friends formed a boisterous escort around me, their earlier intensity replaced with a giddy excitement. Little sister-in-law, you gotta see this, one of them, a lanky boy named Mark, said with a grin. As we walked towards the outdoor basketball court, something extraordinary happened. A freshman girl I barely knew stepped out from behind a tree, smiled shyly, and handed me a single perfect sunflower. Before I could even thank her, a senior from my art class patted my shoulder and passed me a pink rose. On the way to the court, people kept emerging, handing me flowers, daisies, lilies, carnations, until by the time we arrived, I was staggering under the weight of a huge, riotously colorful bouquet. My confusion was a living thing fluttering in my chest alongside my heartbeat. Then I saw it. The basketball court was transformed. The stands were filled with students, their faces lit with anticipation. And in the center of the court, surrounded by what seemed like 1,000 flickering fairy lights, was a magnificent 3-tier birthday cake. Tiny candles formed the number 18, their flames dancing like a halo in the gentle dusk. And then they began to sing. "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you." The voices swelled, a chorus of hundreds washing over me. My eyes stung, my throat tightened. I was so moved I couldn't speak. When the song ended, everyone erupted into cheers. "Happy birthday, Arya." I stood there, clutching my absurd bouquet, tears threatening to spill over. "You guys," I finally managed, my voice thick with emotion. "What are you doing? Didn't I already have a party yesterday?" Kale stepped out from the crowd. The fairy lights reflected in his dark eyes, making them shine like obsidian. He looked only at me. "Yesterday," he said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet that had fallen, "someone else did that for you. Today I wanted to do it." In that instant, the memory of my ruined birthday, of Lily's blown-out candles and Leo's betrayal, didn't just fade. It was obliterated. It was replaced by this, a beautiful, perfect memory created by this boy who looked at me as if I were his entire world. "Don't flatter the little sister-in-law so much. Share a slice with us," someone yelled from the crowd, breaking the spell. Kale grinned, a wild, free thing, and on impulse tore off a piece of the cake and lobbed it at Mark. The playful act was a spark to tinder. The joke exploded into a full-scale, joyous cake fight. I shrieked with laughter as frosting flew through the air. Kale, ever my shield, positioned himself in front of me, taking most of the hits, his back and shoulders becoming a canvas of pastel-colored buttercream. While he was distracted, fending off an attack from 2 of his friends, I secretly grabbed a large handful of cake I'd stashed on a nearby bench. I darted around him and smeared it, with perfect aim, across his cheek and into his dark hair. He froze, his eyes wide with mock outrage. Before I could finish laughing, he moved. His hand snaked out, capturing my waist, and his mouth covered mine in a sudden, cake-sweetened kiss. The world dissolved into the taste of sugar in him. The cheers of our friends faded into a distant roar. Night had fully fallen now, and the fairy lights blurred around his silhouette. When he released me, both of us were breathless and grinning, covered in cake. Then he did something that stole the air from my lungs completely. Kale dropped to one knee. The crowd fell utterly silent. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on black silk, was a bracelet. But it wasn't gold or silver. It was a translucent, milky white jade, intricately carved, glowing softly in the ambient light. His hand trembled slightly, but his voice was resolute, cutting through the stillness. "Arya," he began, his gaze locked on mine. "Will you be my girlfriend? Officially. For real." A collective gasp rippled through the stands. "I'm keeping this," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "This jade bracelet, it was my mother's. She left it so that one day I could give it to my daughter-in-law." He took a deep breath. "Take it as a token, a promise, and I'll be with you for life." The silence held for a heartbeat longer, and then the court erupted. "Yes, yes, yes." The roar was deafening. I couldn't speak. I could only nod, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling down my cheeks, tracing paths through the smudges of frosting. He smiled, a brilliant, unguarded smile that transformed his entire face, and carefully slipped the cool, smooth jade onto my wrist. It was a perfect fit. As the bracelet settled against my skin, the sky above us flared to life. But not with the fiery, terrifying explosions of my memories. This was different. The night sky bloomed with countless points of light, swirling and morphing into breathtaking shapes. Flowers of fire, soaring birds, shimmering constellations. It was a light show, a technological marvel projected against the canvas of the dark, utterly silent and completely safe. He knew I might panic at real fireworks, so he used technology to replace them. I leaned against him, overwhelmed, and watched the breathtaking display. "But you already agreed to me yesterday," I whispered into his ear, remembering our conversation on the balcony. He held me tight, his voice a low rumble against my back. That yes was a cue for me to move forward. "But love," he said, his tone suddenly serious, "has to start with a real confession. I'll use my actions to silence all the rumors. You're good, Arya. You deserve this. The words, so simple, so sincere, undid me completely. I turned in his arms, rose on my toes and murmured against his lips, almost without thinking, I like you, Kale. The light show drew what felt like the entire school, all eyes on us as the night wrapped that perfect moment in magic. It was a public declaration, a reclaiming of my name and my story. And on the periphery of the light I saw them. Leo and Lily had arrived. Both of them looked terrible, their faces pale and twisted in the shifting colors of the display. They were too late. The narrative was no longer theirs to control. The next few weeks passed in a new rhythm. Lily, terrified that I still had the evidence from her phone, lived in a state of cautious fear. She was noticeably more polite, her barbs sheathed. I wasn't in any rush to expose her. I was waiting for the right moment, letting her stew in her own anxiety. Meanwhile, the photos and videos from Kale's birthday surprise for me spread everywhere. The edits were cinematic, the lighting flattering. The handsome, troubled boy and the graceful ballerina love story quickly attracted a flood of fans and spontaneous support online. Our kiss under the light show became an iconic image. Sometimes, people online still tried to ship me with Leo, clinging to the childhood friend angle. Kale outwardly acted unchanged, shrugging it off. But I could hear his internal grumbling. Being paired with Leo would make more sense? This edit is well done. Buy an ad package to boost our tag. I just smile and squeeze his hand. Fortunately, the fabricated scandal was eventually buried under the sheer, overwhelming force of our genuine story. The gossip cooled and Kale and I settled into a comfortable, normal rhythm, studying for finals together in the library, his presence a steady, calming force. One seemingly ordinary weekend, my mother drove Lily and me home after a shopping trip. We walked into the house, laden with bags, and were met with a scene of domestic shock. My father and Diana, Lily's foster aunt, were on the living room sofa, naked and tangled together, caught in the act. The door, which Lily had thrown open with a dramatic flourish, now framed their frozen, horrified expressions. Lily, the master of scripts, had her lines ready. What the hell? Why no? Didn't you say they went to Disney? She shrieked, her face a mask of perfect, betrayed innocence. My father panicked, scrambling for his clothes. Diana tried to cover herself and run, but Lily, in a performance worthy of an award, grabbed her by the hair. Auntie, how could you treat me like this? She screamed. A chaotic, vicious fight erupted. Exactly the scene my mother and I had planned for. We stood back, observers. Just as Lily and my father were screaming at their loudest, I coldly threw a spark into the oil slick of their drama. I suppose this is a better time to mention, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. They all froze and looked at me. That the rumors about me at school, the edited video, the slanderous posts, they all came from Lily's phone. She orchestrated the whole thing to ruin my reputation. The effect was instantaneous. I had given my father an actual daughter to reckon with and let Lily see the true face of the man she called Dad. A man who would cheat on his wife with her dead mother's best friend. When my mother, who had been standing silently by the door, learned the full truth of how I had been slandered, she clutched me in a painful, fierce embrace. Then she turned her fury on the unfaithful man. Thomas, she declared, her voice like ice. I'm ending this marriage. I want a divorce. Definitely. Caught in the act, humiliated and faced with the evidence of his favorite child's malice, he had no ground to stand on. He signed the papers my mother's lawyer had ready, packed a single suitcase, and left the house empty-handed, taking his foul-minded, illegitimate daughter with him. Don't leave anything of yours in my house, my mother told him as he slunk out the door. With Uncle Ben's help, we had the best lawyer. The divorce was swift. The house and its contents were sold, the proceeds all going to my mother. Everything my father had built on her family's money was stripped from him. We moved into a sleek, modern apartment that smelled only of US, of freedom and new beginnings. Lily, of course, went mad. She showed up at our new building, screaming. It's you, isn't it? You set this up. She tried to slap me, but my mother was faster. She blocked the blow and then struck back, her hand connecting with Lily's cheek with a sharp crack that echoed in the lobby. If I wanted to beat you, I would, my mother hissed, her gentle demeanor gone, replaced by a ferocity I had never seen. How dare you mistreat my daughter? If I hadn't taken you in, who would have raised you? Ungrateful wretch. You show your face here again and I'll strike you every time. My mother stood proud and fierce, a lioness defending her cub. I realized then that the more you yielded, the more they pushed. We were done yielding. Coincidentally, South High was holding its 10th anniversary celebration, inviting outstanding alumni to perform. Leo with his grade 10 piano certificate and I with my grade 8 ballet certificate were asked to perform together, one playing, one dancing. When I received the notice, Leo personally came to pick me up for rehearsal. "Aria," he said, his voice hopeful, "let's try a run-through." Kale was with me, watching from the bleachers, grinding his teeth in annoyance. "It's not like I only know piano," he muttered internally, tousling his messy hair. "I can play guitar just as well." I laughed and reached up, smoothing his unruly bangs. "No need. Either way," I said, my voice dropping, "I won't be able to finish this performance." I knew what was coming. I knew Lily would slip sharp pins into my ballet shoes. And before the show began, she'd fake a fainting spell to lure Leo away. Without musical accompaniment, I'd be forced to dance alone, only to have my foot torn open. That year in my past life, it had been the biggest disaster of the ceremony. After practice, Leo turned to me. "I know you're an incredible dancer. Can I say something?" Kale curled his lip. "Do what you want. I've got things to do. Call me when you're done. I'll come pick you up." He walked off, but his parting thought was a nervous whisper in my mind. "Oh God, what's Leo trying now? Cutting in like this isn't right. Aria won't leave me, will she?" I ran after him, stood on my toes and kissed his forehead. "I'll wait for you," I promised. Back in the practice room, with the late afternoon sun slanting through the high windows, even the dust motes looked dreamy. Leo played. I danced. His Chopin was flawless, my movements fluid. Each note, each extension, each turn fit together seamlessly, a ghost of our childhood when he would play and I would dance for our families. When practice ended, I called Kale. But Leo held me back. He pulled out a bracelet strung with little painted seashells, the trinket I had treasured most as a child, a gift from my mother I thought I'd lost years ago. "This was yours, wasn't it?" he asked, his voice soft. I took it. The tiny shells glistened under the light, pulling a rush of childhood memories from my heart. "It's mine. Why do you have it?" His face flickered with pain. "Lily told me it was hers. That you'd given it to her because you didn't want it anymore." I gave a cold smile. "Oh. And so what?" I made to leave. He hurried to stop me, pulling out the ring, the same one he'd planned to confess with on my birthday. "Aria, I like you. On your birthday back then I wanted to tell you. I'm sorry. I was stupid. I see everything now." My answer was short, my indifference a physical blow that seemed to stun him. He wilted, his spirit gone. "I'm sorry, Aria," he whispered. "I really don't understand you. Don't you trust me? I've treated you so well. Everyone knows I like you. Did you really need me to say it? Did I lose my voice?" He looked genuinely bewildered. "You suspected Lily lied, but you never came to me. Or did you think that by hesitating, by not choosing, you could just keep enjoying the affection I gave you?" My words, echoing the conclusions I'd drawn in my past life, stabbed at his weakness. Leo stood frozen, silent. "All done. Let's go eat." Kale's carefree laugh rang out as he strode back into the room. He swung my backpack off my shoulder. "So, what do you want, hot pot?" Before we could leave, Leo's voice called out behind me, desperate. "Aria, can we still be friends?" Kale hesitated, his body tensing. I didn't even look back. "Leo," I said, my voice clear and final. "I already have plenty of good friends." I took Kale's hand, the jade bracelet cool against my skin, and walked out of the practice room, away from the ghost of the girl I used to be, and into the bright, certain future that was waiting. The day of the anniversary performance arrived, buzzing with a nervous energy that felt both familiar and alien. Backstage was a chaotic symphony of rustling costumes, chattering students, and the discordant warm-up notes from various instruments. I stood before the mirror, not in the delicate pink satin shoes I was expected to wear, but in my street clothes. My assigned ballet slippers sat in their box, pristine and untouched. Leo, already in his crisp black suit, approached me, his brow furrowed. "Aria, it's almost our turn. Aren't you changing your shoes?" I glanced at the clock on the wall, my heart a steady, calm drum. "Oh no," I said, my voice laced with a perfectly feigned distress. "Lily." He fainted. Quick, go check on her. Just as I knew he would, Leo hesitated, his eyes flicking from me to the backstage clock, conflict warring on his face. The compulsion to run to Lily's side to be the heroic big brother was an instinct too deeply ingrained. He gritted his teeth. Arya, I'll check quickly and be right back. I promise. I offered him a bitter smile as he dashed away. Even with a second chance, some things were written in stone. His choice was one of them. A hollow feeling echoed in my chest, not of heartbreak but of finality. The last thread connecting me to my past life had just snapped. Just then a pair of shoes appeared in my line of sight. But they weren't the soft, vulnerable satin of ballet slippers. They were a brilliant, defiant crimson, made of a sturdy, supple leather with reinforced toes and a slight, solid platform. They were combat boots disguised as ballet shoes. A deep, husky voice drawled, "Princess Arya, want to try rock ballet?" I looked up into Kale's eyes. They were alight with a mischievous, daring fire. He held a guitar slung over his shoulder. Without a word, I sat and slipped on the extraordinary shoes. They fit like a second skin, powerful and secure. He took my hand and together we strode towards the stage. The announcer had just finished introducing our piece, Chopin's Nocturne, and the audience was settling into a quiet, expectant hush. The stage was set for a classic, elegant performance. Then Kale and I walked out. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. I was no longer in a tutu. I wore a simple black leotard and a flowing crimson skirt that matched the shoes. Kale, in ripped jeans and a black t-shirt, looked nothing like a classical pianist. He strode to the center of the stage, plugged his guitar into an amp and faced the crowd. "Oh my God, isn't that Kale?" someone whispered loud enough to be heard. "Ah, Kale looks so handsome and Arya is stunning." Though he was famous as the school's troublemaker, Kale's raw charisma had never been less than Leo's. And now, carefree and a little reckless on stage, he looked utterly serious as he leaned into the microphone. "The plan changed," he said, his voice a low growl through the speakers. "This one's for Arya." Then he played. It wasn't Chopin. It was a powerful, driving rock anthem, all crashing chords and a melody that was both fierce and beautiful. The first note rang out and the whole hall seemed to vibrate with the energy. And I danced. It wasn't the ethereal, floating ballet I was known for. It was grounded, powerful, and explosive. I used my ballet training, the extensions, the turns, the leaps, but I infused them with a raw rock and roll edge. My body became an instrument of the music, a physical manifestation of the guitar's wail and the drum's thunder. It was strange, it was magnetic, and it was utterly irresistible. On stage our eyes met. My heart hammered as if it would burst from my chest, not from fear but from a wild, intoxicating joy. This was my stage. This was my music. This was my choice. By the time the last crashing chord faded, the applause and cheers that rose were like a tidal wave, shaking the very foundations of the auditorium. We stood hand in hand, breathless and sweating, bowing to the roaring crowd. It was then that Leo hurried back, his face pale and frantic. He saw me standing triumphant with Kale, and the reality of his choice, of what he had missed, crashed down on him. The performance was over. He was too late. Later we learned the aftermath. My old, pink ballet slippers had been taken by the principal's daughter for a different performance. As fate would have it, she had been sabotaged. She'd screamed in pain on stage, her foot bleeding. The school administration, furious, immediately checked the backstage cameras. The footage was clear. Lily, slipping into the dressing room before the show, a glint of sharp, malicious metal in her hand. She was publicly reprimanded, her actions exposed for the entire school to see. If not for my father's dwindling money shielding her, she would have been expelled on the spot. That night at the celebration party, I noticed Kale's fingers were red and raw, the skin cracked and blistered. "What's wrong with your fingers?" I asked, concerned, taking his hand in mine. The boys around us erupted into teasing laughter. Little sister-in-law's new dancing shoes fit all right? Kale tapped the loudest one on the head with his chopsticks and growled, "Shut up." It turned out he had spent days breaking in the stiff new leather of the red shoes himself, wearing down his own hands bit by bit so they wouldn't hurt my feet. The warmth that spread through my chest was so profound it ached. I secretly took his injured hand in both of mine and stroked it gently. "Thank you," I whispered. His palm was so big it easily enclosed mine. "Silly." he grunted, his voice rough with emotion. You don't need to say thanks to us. I was free. Free from a bad father, a manipulative stepsister, and the hesitant boy who could never fully choose me. My life, my world, finally felt bright and clear, like the sun after a long storm. People often say you only notice the storm when it's gone. I realized my world had no real tempests of its own. Every storm and pain had been brought by the toxic people I had now excised. Kale discovered I was still terrified of fire, and each week with infinite patience he took me to see a psychologist. With his quiet, steady encouragement, the phobia began to ease its vicious grip. I no longer panicked at the sight of a candle. Mom and Uncle Ben's relationship was quietly blossoming, sweeter and more passionate than anything I'd ever witnessed. It was a love built on years of quiet respect and longing, and now it was finally in full, glorious bloom. Everything was moving in the right direction. Then the final test came. Summer camp. I returned thinking that Lily, now mired in her father's financial disgrace and social shame, wouldn't be allowed to join. To my surprise, she had managed to get a position as part of the support staff and was assigned, along with Kale and me, to be a counselor. After going over the camp rules with the eager, chattering children, I smiled. If you have any problems, you can come find head counselor Arya or head counselor Kale. A freckled boy piped up. Does head counselor Arya have a boyfriend? Kids that age loved teasing. Kale heard and immediately slung an arm around my shoulders, publicly declaring to the circle of giggling children, head counselor Arya's boyfriend is me. After the campers had scattered to their activities that day, I saw Lily cleaning the dining hall. She flashed that sickly sweet smile I knew all too well, the signal that something nasty was brewing. Sis, I miss you so much, she cooed, her voice dripping with false honey. Too bad you don't remember me. I curled my lip. Don't call me sis. My mother never had another daughter. The last night of camp was supposed to have a grand fireworks display. That was when I knew Lily would set her final desperate plot in motion and trigger the explosion. I reviewed the safety checklist meticulously, fireworks quality checks, ignition locations, and marked in bold red ink, please double verify several more times. I planned to find an excuse to avoid the opening ceremony, to be far away when it happened. But suddenly Kale leaned close to my ear, his breath warm against my skin. Arya, he whispered, do you want to do something crazy? Before I could answer, he grabbed my hand and we were running, sprinting away from the gathering crowd, past the cabins, all the way to the secluded rocky shore of the lake. The sea wind whistled past our ears, tugging at our hair and clothes. The only thing I could hold on to tightly was Kale's hand. You're strong already, Arya, he said, his voice steady as we reached the water's edge. If you don't like fireworks, you don't have to watch them. It turned out he'd pulled me away because he worried the real explosions would terrify me. His clear eyes reflected the darkening sky, the summer night, and my own silhouette. He smiled, leaned down, and kissed me soft and deep. Arya, he murmured against my lips, I love you. The words settled in my soul, a balm and a shield. In the distance, despite all the checks, the explosion happened. A deafening boom echoed across the lake, followed by screams. Fortunately, the spot where I should have been standing was empty. The one most seriously injured, we learned later from the frantic radio calls, was Lily. When the ambulance arrived, people were still buzzing with shocked confusion. Why did she run right into the blast? One counselor asked another. Don't even mention it. When they found Arya wasn't there, Lily nearly went insane and flung herself into the spot. Lily was badly burned, but compared to my previous life, compared to the charred ruin I had become, her injuries were lighter. She woke up a week later in the hospital, wrapped from head to toe like a mummy. She insisted on seeing me. If not for my father, broken and begging on the phone, I probably wouldn't have bothered. But I went. I needed to see the end of this chapter with my own eyes. No sooner had I reached the door of her private room than I heard Kale's voice, low and dangerous, from within. You think this is the end for messing with Arya? He said, each word a shard of ice. Know your place. This time I'm being lenient because you're Arya's stepsister. Next time I won't hold back. Lily croaked a few times, her voice hoarse cries like a crow's. You think my sister only hates me? If she knew your background, would she still want you? Kale paused. I could picture the sharp, cold smile on his face. What background do you think I have? Lily hissed, her voice dripping with a vicious, knowing malice. What do you have to be proud of? Aren't you like me? An illegitimate child? Why pretend to be kind in front of my sister? The words hit me like a physical blow, rooting me to the spot. The K family. They were powerful old money. I knew they had more than one son, but the details were always shrouded in secrecy. Kale walked to the window, his voice low and somber when he spoke again. Do you know why I'm illegitimate? He asked, the word laced with a lifetime of bitterness. Because my older brother was born with a congenital disease. He needed a bone marrow transplant. He said, the pronoun a heavy weight. Little Chu was born with a strong life force. A spare part. That's why. That silhouette, the chubby, sad boy from my childhood garden, it always felt familiar. The memory, long buried, surfaced with painful clarity. That summer, after I'd pulled Leo from the community pool and the adults had taken him to the hospital, I had wandered off unnoticed. In the vast garden of the estate next door, there was a chubby boy standing with his back to me, his shoulders slumped in despair. I stood behind the fence and asked, "Why are you upset?" The chubby boy had frowned. "I'm hungry. My food isn't tasty." He'd looked so lonely. I ran home and brought him a pile of my favorite snacks. We sat on opposite sides of the fence, eating and laughing together. That night, screams echoed from the house next door, and their stern housekeeper came to warn my mother not to let their young master eat junk anymore. "If you don't feed him, he's sick, you know," my mother had argued. The boy had shaken his head. "No, that's not it. My brother is sick and needs my marrow." "Does it hurt?" I had asked, my child's heart aching for him. He only nodded. A while later he said simply, "It's okay. After all, I exist because of my brother. I ate so well yesterday." "Thanks." I had told him with all the seriousness a child could muster, no one is born to sacrifice themselves entirely for someone else. Not unless that person agrees. I pushed the hospital room door open and stepped inside. "Kale," I said firmly, my eyes finding his. "Let's go home." Lily, seeing me, tried to lunge forward, but her body was immobilized by bandages. "On what basis?" she screeched, her voice cracking. "On what basis do you get everything without effort when I've worked so hard for what I have? This isn't fair. This isn't fair." Kale immediately stepped in front of me, a human shield against her venom. But that very move, his instinct to protect me, made Lily even angrier. I gently pulled Kale's hand and walked forward calmly, stopping at the foot of her bed. "Unfair?" I asked, my voice quiet but clear. "Then tell me, on what basis have you benefited? 4 years, you've pretended to be innocent while relying on my father's favoritism to do all kinds of disgusting things. Don't you know how much of my parents' money and attention was poured into you compared to me? You stole my father, you tried to steal Leo, and then you set an explosion to try to kill me. Lily, don't be so shameless. Your mother, the mistress, died in a car accident. As for you ending up like this," I gestured at her bandaged form, "you have no one to blame but yourself. You reap what you sow." I set the bouquet of white lilies I'd brought on the sunny windowsill. Lily's blurred, hate-filled eyes stopped on them. "Everyone has their own field to tend," I said. "Stop staring at mine, wasting your life. Maybe the person you need most is a psychologist." I turned to leave, Kale's hand secure in mine. "I hope we never meet again." On the way back, Kale walked with his familiar arrogant swagger, but I could feel the tension in him. He asked carefully, "Did you hear everything?" "Yes," I replied simply. His palm was slightly damp with sweat. He reached for me, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "Baby, you won't leave me, right? Now that you know what I am." I stopped walking, turned to him and tapped his forehead lightly. "Of course I won't. Why didn't you tell me sooner that you were that chubby kid back then? The one I shared my cookies with?" Kale scratched his head, a boyish gesture that belied his tough exterior. "I had to keep my idol image, you know. Pride and all that." "Wow, such vanity," I teased, poking his chest. "So, a school heartthrob like you can't have any flaws?" Seeing the proud, vulnerable line of his jaw made my chest ache for a moment. It turned out his indifference, his role as the school's untouchable tough guy, was the armor he'd built to fight a fate he never asked for. He pulled me into a tight hug, his voice a raw whisper in the hollow of my neck. "Someone once told me, no one is born to be sacrificed for another." He held me tighter. "I have my own life too. Baby, you saved me from that burning abyss a long time ago. And as I held him, I knew he had done the same for me. We were two wounded souls, not fixing each other, but building something new and strong from the ashes of our pasts together. The world outside the hospital felt different. The air was cleaner, the colors brighter. It was as if Lily's confession and Cale's revealed secret had lanced a festering wound, draining the poison from my life. We didn't speak much on the drive home. Cale's hand rested on my knee, his thumb drawing slow, absent-minded circles, a silent anchor in the calm after the storm. My mother was waiting for us in our new apartment, her face etched with concern. "How is she?" she asked, though her tone suggested she was asking out of obligation, not care. "Alive," I said flatly. "And full of more venom than ever." I didn't mention Cale's secret. That was his to share, not mine. My mother sighed, a sound of weary finality. "Then we are done with them. Truly done." She looked at Cale, her gaze softening. "Thank you for being there for her, Cale." He just nodded, a respectful dip of his chin. "She trusts me with her daughter," his thought came laced with a quiet, profound pride. In the days that followed, a strange peace settled over our lives. The divorce was finalized, the assets secured. My father and Lily became ghosts, their presence erased from our daily existence. The silence they left behind was not empty, but full of potential. I threw myself into my final exams, the routine of studying a welcome normality. Cale was a constant presence, often sprawled on the floor of my room with his own textbooks, a picture of focused intensity that contradicted his rebellious reputation. He never overstayed, never pressured, his presence a steady, grounding force. "She's biting her lip. That problem must be hard. Should I offer help? No, she's smart. She'll get it." I'd smile to myself and solve the equation, his silent faith a better motivator than any tutor. One evening, as we took a break on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle to life, he turned to me. "What now, Arya?" The question was simple, but its implications were vast. What now after the revenge? What now after the survival? "I live," I said, the answer surprising me with its simplicity. "I just want to live. Without looking over my shoulder. Without the fear." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Hey. Then we live." He started taking me to new places, far from the haunts of our old life. We explored hidden bookstores in the old part of the city, ate at noisy family-run noodle shops where no one knew our names, and went for long drives with the windows down, music blaring, going nowhere in particular. He was systematically building a new map of our world, one that contained only joy. My therapy sessions continued. Dr. Evans was a kind, patient woman. With Cale waiting for me in the reception area each time, a solid, reassuring presence, the work felt less daunting. We started with small things. Lighting a scented candle in my room, then gradually staying in the same room as the gas stove when my mother was cooking. Each small victory was celebrated with a squeeze of my hand from Cale, his internal cheer a louder celebration than any words. One day, about a month after the summer camp incident, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table. Uncle Ben was with her, their hands linked comfortably. "Arya," she began, a nervous but happy smile on her face. "Ben and we've decided we're not getting any younger. We've wasted enough time." My heart swelled. "Are you?" Ben chuckled. "We're getting married, Arya. If that's all right with you." I launched myself from my chair and hugged them both. "It's more than all right. It's perfect." The wedding was a small, simple affair in a sun-drenched garden, a world away from the lavish, stressful parties of my past life. My mother wore a simple cream-colored dress and looked happier and younger than I had ever seen her. Ben looked at her as if she had hung the moon. I stood as her maid of honor, Cale by my side in a suit that made him look both incredibly handsome and endearingly uncomfortable. "Tie is too tight. But Arya looks so beautiful. Worth it." As they exchanged vows, promising to cherish the time they had left, I felt Cale's hand find mine. We weren't just witnesses. We were part of this new beginning. The past was truly being buried, not with bitterness but with love and hope. After the wedding, life settled into a rhythm that was so normal it felt extraordinary. I graduated with honors. Cale, to everyone's surprise but mine, aced his finals, his fierce intelligence finally channeled into something concrete. We celebrated with our friends, with my mom and Ben, a noisy, happy group in our apartment, the sound of laughter echoing off walls that held no bad memories. I decided to defer my university placement for a year. I needed time. Time to just be. Kale supported the decision without question. "I'm not going anywhere, Arya," he said one night as we sat on the rooftop of our building, a blanket spread beneath us, a thermos of hot chocolate between us. "Whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, I'm with you." "I know," I said, and I truly did. The frantic, desperate love of my past life for Leo felt like a childish fever dream compared to the deep, steady certainty I felt with Kale. It was during this period of peace that I found myself drawn back to the dance studio. I hadn't put on my ballet shoes since the rock performance. The memory of the pin, the blood, the pain, it was all tied to the classical form. I stood in the empty studio one afternoon, the familiar smell of resin and polished wood filling my senses. My old pink shoes were in a box at the back of my closet, relics of a past life. But the red ones Kale had given me were on my feet. I turned on the sound system, but instead of Chopin or Tchaikovsky, I chose a modern ambient track with a deep pulsing rhythm. And I danced. Not the strict, disciplined ballet of my childhood, and not the angry, rebellious rock ballet of the performance. This was something else. It was fluid and free, a dance of healing. I moved for the joy of movement, for the strength in my body, for the simple fact that I could. Kale found me there later, sweat-sheened and breathless. He leaned against the doorframe, just watching, a look of such pure, unguarded admiration on his face that it made my breath catch. "She's so beautiful when she's free," his thought whispered through the quiet room. He didn't clap or offer critique. He just walked over, took my hand and spun me gently into his arms, swaying to the silent music that was just for us. This was living. This was the after I had fought so hard for. It wasn't a dramatic happy ever after finale, but a quiet, sustained peace. It was morning coffee with my mother and Ben. It was late-night study sessions that turned into whispered conversations. It was the feeling of Kale's hand in mine, a constant, reassuring weight. The nightmares of the fire became less frequent, their edges blurred by the sharp, beautiful reality of my new life. The fear was no longer a cage, but a distant memory, a ghost that had finally been laid to rest. One evening, as we were walking home from the cinema, a street vendor was selling bunches of helium balloons. One escaped, a vibrant red orb, soaring up into the darkening sky. I watched it rise, a speck of color against the vast expanse, until it disappeared from sight. Kale squeezed my hand. "What are you thinking?" I looked at him, at the boy who had pulled me from the abyss, who had fought my monsters with me, who had given me a world without fear. "I'm thinking," I said, a slow, sure smile spreading across my face, "that I'm finally free." And for the first time in either of my lives, I believed it with every fiber of my being. The curse was broken. The story was mine to write now, and the next chapter was blank, full of nothing but promise. The piece was a delicate thing, a soap bubble shimmering in the sunlight. It was beautiful, but I knew it couldn't last. Lily was a scorpion. It was her nature to sting. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was the calm before a final, desperate strike. It began subtly. A series of anonymous, venomous comments on my social media posts, all from newly created accounts. They didn't attack my character this time. They went for Kale. "Does she know who she's dating? Ask him about his real family. The K family doesn't claim him. He's a dirty secret. Illegitimate and proud of it. How fitting for the fallen princess." I deleted them, blocked the accounts, but they were like hydras. For every one I cut down, 2 more appeared. Kale saw them. His jaw would tighten, a shadow passing behind his eyes, but he never said a word. He just tightened his grip on my hand. "Don't let her get to you. She's nothing." But she was getting to me. The comments were a constant, buzzing reminder that the past wasn't as buried as I'd hoped. The world outside our happy bubble was still there, and it was cruel. The final blow came on a Tuesday. I was meeting Kale for lunch off campus when my phone buzzed with a notification from a local gossip blog. The headline made my blood run cold. "Scandal in the K family. The illegitimate son and his gold-digging girlfriend." The article was a masterpiece of malicious fabrication. It painted Kale as a vengeful, discarded son, scheming to get a piece of the K family fortune. It painted me as a calculated social climber from a ruined family, latching onto the only K who would have me. It detailed his brother's illness, framing Kale's very existence as a cold, biological transaction. It even had a grainy long-lens photo of us kissing on my balcony, our private moment twisted into something sordid. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped my phone. This wasn't just schoolyard gossip. This was nuclear. This was Lily, armed with the one piece of information that could truly wound Cale, and she had fired it into the world. I found Cale at our usual spot. He was sitting perfectly still, his phone face down on the table, his knuckles white. He already knew. "Cale," I whispered, sliding into the seat opposite him. He looked up, and the raw pain in his eyes was a physical blow. The arrogant, untouchable mask was gone. This was the little boy from the garden, the one who believed he was only born to be a spare part. "It's my fault," I said, the words tasting like ash. "She's doing this because of me." "No." His voice was rough, scraped raw. "This is who she is. This was always going to happen." He pushed his phone towards me. "My father's office called. They want to see me. The K family. The fortress he had been locked out of. They were summoning him. We went together." The K corporate headquarters was a towering glass monolith that seemed to suck the light from the sky. The lobby was a cavern of cold marble and silent, judging stares. We were ushered into a sterile, minimalist office on the top floor. A man sat behind a vast, empty desk, Cale's father. He had Cale's sharp jawline and dark eyes, but where Cale's held fire, his were chips of ice. He didn't look at me. "Cale," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "This publicity is unacceptable. It's bad for your brother's health. It's bad for the company." "I didn't ask for it," Cale said, his voice low and steady, though I could feel the tremor in the hand he had resting on my shoulder. "You attract it," his father countered, his gaze finally flicking to me, dismissive and cold. "By associating with people from messy situations. This ends now." My spine straightened. "What ends now?" "The relationship," Mr. K said, as if stating a simple, irrefutable fact. "You will break it off. You will issue a statement denying these allegations. And you young lady will disappear. We will make it worth your while, of course." He slid a check across the desk. I didn't look at the amount. The zeros were a blur. Cale laughed, a short, harsh sound. "You think you can buy her? You think you can buy me?" "I think I can protect this family's name," his father said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And if you won't help me do that, then you are no son of mine. You will be cut off. Completely. No trust fund, no inheritance, no name." The ultimatum hung in the air, suffocating and final. It was a choice between me and his family, between love and a legacy. Cale didn't even hesitate. He looked his father dead in the eye, his own gaze now as cold as the man's across the desk. "I was never your son," Cale said, his voice eerily calm. "I was your insurance policy. Arya's my family. She's the only thing that's ever been real." He took my hand. "Let's go." We walked out of that office, leaving the check in the icy silence behind. The elevator ride down was silent. But as the doors opened into the bustling lobby, Cale stopped and pulled me into a fierce, desperate hug. "I'm sorry," he murmured into my hair. "I'm so sorry I dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me anywhere," I said, holding him tight. "I chose you. I choose you. Now and always." But the battle wasn't over. The blog post had gone viral. The whispers followed us everywhere. Cale's friends, his crew, were fiercely loyal, but the wider world was cruel. We were pariahs. The illegitimate son, and the gold digger. The labels stuck. A week later, the final piece of Lily's plan fell into place. My father showed up at our apartment door. He looked old, broken, and desperate. "Arya," he begged, his voice cracking. "You have to call off your dog. You have to tell Cale to stop." "Stop what?" I asked, coldness seeping into my voice. "This," he cried, waving his phone. "The lawsuits. The investigations. He's leveraging his family's connections, what's left of them that will still talk to him, to dig into my business. He's going to ruin me completely." I stared at him, comprehension dawning. Cale hadn't been idle. While I was trying to shield us from the fallout, he had gone on the offensive. He was systematically destroying my father's remaining assets, the very foundation Lily's precarious new life was built upon. "He's not my dog," I said softly. "He's the man protecting me from the monster you created. You brought this on yourself. You and Lily." My father's face crumpled. She's gone, Arya. The pressure, the shame. She had a psychotic break. She's in a psychiatric facility. Is that what you wanted? Are you happy now? The news should have felt like a victory. But it just felt hollow. Lily was finally truly broken. But the cost felt immense. That night I confronted Cale. He was in his apartment, surrounded by legal documents, his face a mask of grim determination. Is it true? I asked. About my father? About Lily? He looked up, his eyes tired. Yes. Why? I whispered. Why now? We were finally free. Because they hurt you, he said, his voice raw with a fury he'd kept bottled up. They tried to destroy you again and again. They tried to tear us apart. I told you I wouldn't let anyone hurt you. I meant it. He stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. This is the only language they understand. Power. Destruction. I'm going to burn their world to the ground so they can never touch you again. I saw it then. The all-consuming fire in him. It wasn't just about protection anymore. It was about vengeance. And in his quest to shield me, he was letting the past dictate his future. He was becoming as ruthless as the people he was fighting. I walked over to him and placed my hands on his chest, feeling the frantic beat of his heart. Cale, I said, my voice firm. Stop. He stilled, looking down at me, confused. You win, I said. They're broken. Lily is gone. My father is finished. You've won. But if you keep going, if you let this anger consume you, then they've still taken something from us. They've taken the good man I fell in love with. I reached up and cupped his face. I don't need you to burn the world for me. I just need you to be here with me in the world we built. Please. Let it go. The fight drained out of him. The fury in his eyes faded, replaced by a dawning horror at the path he was on. He leaned his forehead against mine, his breath shuddering. I was so scared of losing you, he whispered. I can't lose you, Arya. You won't, I promised. But we end this. No. We walk away. For us. He was quiet for a long time, holding me. Then he nodded. Okay, he breathed. For us. He made the calls. The legal pressure stopped. The investigations were halted. We drew a line in the sand. The war was over. In the ensuing silence, the public gossip, deprived of new fuel, slowly died down. The world moved on to the next scandal. We were left in the quiet aftermath, a little battered, a lot wiser, but together. We had faced the worst the past could throw at us, and we had chosen each other, not the fight. We had chosen to live. The silence after the storm was profound. It wasn't the tense, waiting silence of before, but a deep, settled quiet, like the hush after a long winter's snow. The world for the first time felt truly still. We didn't talk much about what had happened. There was no need. The choice we had made in Cale's apartment, to choose us over the war, had become the foundation of everything that came next. The need for vengeance, for validation, for proving ourselves to anyone had simply evaporated. A few weeks after we called off the legal siege, a plain, heavy envelope arrived for Cale. No return address. Inside was a single embossed card. It was an invitation to his brother's wedding. There was no personal note, no apology from his father. Just the cold, formal script. Yes. An offering of a thread back into the world he had rejected. He showed it to me, his expression unreadable. What do you think? I looked at the card, then at him. What do you want, Cale? He was silent for a long moment, turning the thick paper over in his hands. I want to be the kind of man who doesn't need their approval. The kind of man you see when you look at me. You already are that man, I said softly. He smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He took the invitation, tore it neatly in half, and dropped it into the recycling bin. Then I have everything I need. That was the last we heard from the K family. The final door had closed, not with a slam but with a quiet, decisive click. We were free. My deferred year began. I didn't spend it traveling the world or on some grand journey of self-discovery. I spent it living. I got a part-time job at a small, independent art gallery, surrounded by beauty and quiet creativity. I continued to dance in the studio, my style evolving into something uniquely my own. A blend of ballet's grace and a modern, joyful freedom that was entirely me. The red shoes became worn and comfortable, a part of my story. Cale, freed from the shadow of his family's expectations, surprised everyone by channeling his fierce intelligence into a startup with a few of his loyal friends. It was a tech company focused on accessibility software. He never said it, but I knew it was tied to his brother's chronic illness. It was his way of making peace with his past, of creating something good from the pain. We found a small apartment together not far from my mom and Ben. It was ours. We painted the walls together, argued over furniture, and burned our first few attempts at cooking dinner. It was messy and normal and perfect. The jade bracelet never left my wrist, a cool, constant reminder of his promise. One evening about a year after the chaos had ended, we were on our rooftop. The city was spread out before us, a tapestry of lights. It was a clear, cool night. Kale was quiet, unusually pensive. "You're thinking loud," I teased, nudging his shoulder with mine. He turned to me, his face serious in the dim light. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The drama? The intensity?" I thought about it. I thought about the girl I had been. The one who lived for Leo's attention, who trembled at her father's disapproval, who saw Lily as a rival to be defeated. That girl felt like a character from a book I'd read long ago. "No," I said, and the truth of it resonated deep in my soul. "I don't miss the person I was in all that. This." I gestured at the quiet skyline at him. "This is better. This is real." He nodded, satisfied. "Good." He was quiet for another moment, then he reached into his pocket. My breath hitched, a ridiculous fleeting thought of a ring flashing through my mind. But it wasn't a ring. It was a key. He held it out to me. "I know we already live together," he said, a faint blush on his cheeks. "But I bought the building. This one. Ours. I bought it." I stared at him, then at the key, then back at him. You bought the building?" He shrugged, trying for nonchalance and failing miserably. "I wanted to give you roots. Something permanent. Something no one can ever take from us." Tears pricked my eyes, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. He wasn't just giving me a home. He was giving us a foundation, a future built on our own terms. It was the most Kale-like declaration of love imaginable, practical, fierce, and utterly devoted. I took the key, its metal warm, from his hand. "It's perfect." He pulled me into his arms and we stood there, wrapped up in each other and the future we had built from the ashes of our pasts. The scars were still there on both of us. The memory of the fire, the sting of betrayal, the weight of family secrets. They were a part of our history. But they no longer defined us. They were just scars, proof that we had survived, that we had healed. Later that night, as we lay in bed, the city humming a soft lullaby outside our window, I realized something. Rebirth wasn't just about getting a second chance at life. It was about getting a chance to choose a different life. To shed the skin of the person you were told to be and become the person you were meant to be. I had been reborn not just in time but in spirit. The gentle, people-pleasing Arya was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own strength, who had fought for her happiness, and who had found a love that was a partnership, not a pedestal. Kale was already asleep, his arm thrown possessively over my waist, his breathing deep and even. In the quiet dark, I could just make out the faint silvery lines of the burned scar on his palm, the mark he'd earned the night my new life began. I laced my fingers with his. He was my anchor. My rock. My wild, loyal, beautiful boy who had chosen me over everything. And I had chosen him. The past was a closed book. The future was a blank page, and it was ours to write together. There were no more curses to fear, no more fires to escape. There was only this. The quiet certainty of his love, the steady beat of his heart against my back, and the boundless, terrifying, wonderful freedom of a life truly, completely, and finally our own. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. And it was everything. The end.